Hello and welcome back to Books with Duddy. We are back with another reaction, and this time I am giving my thoughts on Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this will have spoilers, so there is your warning. I will be discussing spoilers, including the ending, any twists, characters, major plot points, etc. So if you're trying to avoid spoilers, please stop here. Otherwise, let's get started. So, Atmosphere was a book that, if you asked me if I was enjoying it halfway through, I would have said absolutely not. I am bored out of my mind. But the second half happened, and it really shifted my opinion. I ended up giving this book a 7.6 out of 10, which is a pretty solid score. But let's talk about my reaction. So, first of all, I loved the characters in this book. Joan was a solid protagonist, someone that you could root for, obviously caring, and, you wanted her to find happiness. And then we get all of her colleagues. Obviously, Vanessa, whom Joan starts a relationship with, is probably the one that we get to know most. And I really liked Vanessa because she kind of pushed Joan's boundaries in a good way, to try new things and experience new things. Obviously Joan figures out that, well, I think I don't know, I guess she might be bisexual, but I think she's figured out she's gay. But anyways, yeah, Vanessa was great. She was confident, nice, everything that you'd want in a partner. And then we have the rest of the colleagues. All of them, well, most of them were down to earth. You really liked Hank, and I liked Griff a lot. And, I felt for Griff when, Joan was rejecting him. I guess that was one thing that I felt like Joan unintentionally strung him on a little bit. But again, I think it was unintentional without malice. But Donna, who was Hank's eventual wife, and they have a kid. Donna was, a sweetheart throughout the book. And I liked Lydia's character a lot, at least the way she was written. She was very opinionated, stubborn, extremely competitive. But I think we figured out, with Joan kind of warming up to Lydia more than the others, that Lydia, she had a good heart, but a tough exterior. And, she wasn't perfect, but who is? And then, let's get to the familial love part, and then I'll talk more about Vanessa and her relationship with Joan. But Frances, was awesome. Respectful, nice girl. But good God, Barbara was so infuriating. Oh my gosh, I just wanted to scream at her and her eventual new husband or boyfriend. What was his name? Greg or Doug or something. Just complete assholes. And Barbara was just an absolutely horrible human being. The way she treated Joan, her lack of care for Frances. Oh, it made me mad. And I think maybe that was, now that I'm talking about it, one of the turning points in the book, when Barbara's shitty behavior just became more and more apparent. I think that might have been one of the things that drew me into the book more and more. Luckily, I didn't have that experience with any of my family members, but Joan just trying her hardest to have a good relationship with Barbara and have a good relationship with Frances, and Barbara just being so selfish the entire book and never seeing the fault in her ways. Ugh, I intensely dislike Barbara. But that made it, all the more emotional when she sent Francis away to the boarding school, and ultimately when Joan adopts Francis. That was... It takes a big person to step up and be the parent that a child doesn't have. So that was, for Joan and ultimately Vanessa to do that, it was a big deal. So then we get to Vanessa and Joan's relationship, and I had no idea that this book, that Joan was going to learn or figure out that, she was gay. So I was thinking a lot of the time that, she was going to end up, hooking up with Griff in some way, or at least initially. And, then the pieces started to fall in place when they kind of went stargazing together the first time. And it was obviously a different era that this book was written in, the 1980s, with them needing to be so secretive about the relationship. Not that we are a perfect society now, but I think it was a lot worse in the 1980s. So them having to hide their relationship, it was sad. And, ultimately led to that moment where Joan tries to break it off with Vanessa, ultimately because she thinks it's what's best for Vanessa and her career. And that whole emotional scene was, that was tough, because you shouldn't have to break it off with someone so you're not an embarrassment to the program or whatever. What's his name said, her boss, I can't remember his name now. But it did seem like most of the people in the book were actually accepting. So, they still had to hide it, but most of the people that they were close to, their colleagues and the people around them, besides the real douchey guy, I can't remember his name, were all accepting and kind of happy for them. So that was good to see. And so then at the end of the book, we get back to, where we started, where the mission has all went to shit. But there was not a single part of me that thought Vanessa was surviving the ordeal. I fully expected her to die. And, I was going to be obviously sad about that. So when the voice actually came back through and Vanessa was alive and it looked like Lydia had a good chance to make it, I was, really happy, because for me that was a twist. I thought for sure the way that the book was going, the way that it was setting up, was going to be for a very sad, almost bittersweet ending with Joan adopting Francis, but Vanessa and the rest of the crew all dying. And I guess it still was, bittersweet in a lot of ways, because we lost Hank and Griff and Steve, I think, was the other one. And so in a way it was still bittersweet, but I feel like we had already known most of those people, if not all of those people, were dead throughout the whole book. So anyways, I ended up enjoying this book a lot, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments about where this book went, how it ended, characters you might have liked or disliked. But if you've stuck around this long, I appreciate it. And if you could like and subscribe, I'd appreciate that. And I hope to see you soon.